Crocheting is an ancient yarn craft that has existed for thousands of years, with ancient techniques dating back to as early as 6500 BC.
The power of just a hook and yarn has been evident since then, with modern crocheting evolving in Europe in the 18th century and continuing to develop to this day. Crocheting has recently surged in popularity, with particular growth during the 2020 and 2021 COVID-19 lockdowns.
This period of time left individuals with the desire to learn new hobbies, and with crochet being incredibly accessible, it quickly gained a cult following.
Additionally, its popularity has grown with the increase of mental health conditions like anxiety due to its proven benefits of helping crocheters feel calm, happy, and useful.
When I learnt about crochet, I was drawn in due to my love of crafty hobbies and my desire to have a productive hobby that I could share with my friends and family.
With research, I discovered that crochet involves 6 fundamental stitches that can be manipulated into patterns, and that a good beginner project for this was the granny square.
A granny square is an excellent skill to learn, as it can be turned into hats, jumpers, tote bags, and many other larger projects.
The goal of my project was to successfully crochet a dual-coloured granny square using 3 fundamental crochet stitches and common techniques. In order to reach this goal, I completed 20 hours of learning while utilising the constraints-led approach.
Constraints are factors that influence how movements develop, either by limiting certain actions or enabling specific opportunities.
The constraints-led approach follows Newell models of constraints, which states that 3 constraints must be overcome in order to produce optimal movement and athletic performance. These constraint types are organismic constraints, task constraints, and environmental constraints.
As an individual learning to crochet, I am a complex system with many unpredictable and non-linear degrees of freedom.
By placing constraints on these degrees of freedom that assist me, I am reducing the unpredictability throughout the task and making the skill easier to learn.
As well as this, complex systems have the ability to spontaneously adapt and adjust during movement to seek stability in a process called self-organization. This will be implemented throughout the learning process as I naturally adapt to the new skill in a way that suits my body best.
Additionally, I plan to utilize Josh Kaufman's steps to rapid skill acquisition in order to learn the skill effectively and efficiently. These steps include deconstructing the skill, learning enough to self-correct, removing barriers to practice, and then practicing for 20 hours. I hypothesize that manipulating constraints within my program will promote adaptable and efficient motor coordination, resulting in improved stitch accuracy and speed, developing my crochet skills until I am able to successfully crochet a granny square with ease. In addition to fitting dynamical systems theory, this is also supported by Fitz and Posner's 3 stages of learning. By the time I have completed my 20 hours, I am likely to begin to enter the autonomous stage of learning, with my movements becoming automatic with an increased reliance on kinesthetic feedback and an improved ability to multitask.
To learn to crochet, I implemented a plan based on Joshua Kaufman's 4 steps to rapid skill acquisition, as outlined in his book, The First 20 Hours.
The first step of this process is deconstructing the skill. This involves breaking the task up into smaller components in order to help prioritize. I began by finding a beginner granny square tutorial with good reviews and identified the 3 fundamental stitches involved. This then helped me deconstruct the skill of crocheting a granny square into sub-elements. These included the chain stitch, the double crochet stitch, the slip stitch, other essential skills, and finally the granny square. The second step of the process is learning enough to self-correct. This involved me researching at the beginning of the program so that I had the awareness throughout my learning to be able to fix my own errors. This then meant that I could self-discover techniques, preferences, and strategies to rectify mistakes. In order to complete this, I watched a detailed YouTube video for my first 2 attempts at the beginning of each sub-element, assisting me with how to complete the stitch appropriately. Then I completed the phase individually, avoiding researching when I made a mistake in order to promote self-discovery. The third step involves removing barriers to practice in order to make the process easy. In order to do this, I split each of the elements into 2 phases, spending a 2-hour session on each phase. The first phase involved constraints that made the skill incredibly easy to learn. I manipulated task constraints using a larger hook that was easier to handle and using larger yarn that was easier to crochet with. Additionally, I manipulated my environmental constraints, placing myself in a familiar environment on my couch at home with minimal distractions. These constraints made it very easy to learn and to focus fully on skill acquisition. For the second phase, I made the constraints more difficult. I manipulated the task constraints using a smaller hook that was more difficult to grasp and smaller yarn that was more difficult to manipulate. I changed the environmental constraints, completing my practice in environments that were less familiar or more distracting. These included being outdoors, talking to friends, or watching TV. While barriers were introduced in the second half of each element, these constraints aim to be conducive to training rather than detrimental. After this, the final step is practicing for 20 hours, which I then did. In order to monitor my progress, I completed assessments of each stitch at the beginning of learning it and at the end of phase 2. This assessment involved recording the time taken to crochet 20 of the stitch. If any mistakes were made, I had to fix them and then continue without stopping the timer in order to measure both speed and accuracy. Additionally, I recorded the time taken to complete the stitch at the conclusion of the skill training and 3 days after the training had been completed. Okay, so I'm about to kick off with my first lot of crocheting a chain stitch. So I have my YouTube video set up that I'm going to watch while I do it. I have here a 9mm crochet hook and I have some thick yarn to go with it. The beginning of the learning process included a lot of confused faces as I attempted to learn the new skill for the first time. However,